times, you know.
I, oh,
So,
I know.
yeah, you can equip us with the tools, and I look forward. So I'm going to keep behind the Dean. Usually starts out where you tell us about yourself and why you started what you're doing.
Okay, so my story isn't like a mind-blowing story, but it's the story of like every young girl who just wanted to make it in the world, you know. So I got an MBA in the US, and that's kind of where my love for business started anyway. But then I also grew up, I always say I grew up in an entrepreneurial home. So my dad had his own business. He did very well in the oil sector. So I'd always seen him as inspiration. And then as I grew older, I always obviously wanted to work in the city. I always, when I was in America, I wanted to work with one of the big five. I was very lucky. I got a job with one of them. And then when I moved over here to the UK, I then started looking for a job again. But at the back of my mind, I knew this was just one of those things you wanted to do when you were younger. So I worked with an oil company. And while I was working with them, I then started to look at property as, well, this would be something interesting to do because I knew about property investing, you know,
Okay.
Poor Dad, all those types of books that one had read. Because as you can imagine, America is very much the American dream. They're all about the list, and they're all about buying and, you know. So yeah, so that's where that definitely came from as far as property. And once I understood the way the market worked over here, because I moved here in 2003, it took a few years for me to understand the way it worked. But one of the things I started doing, and I always say, if you are interested in property, the easiest way to get started is just to go to the auction rooms. When we go back to, like, you know, how things used to be, go back to normal. So I used to get the catalogs, go through them, and then I would go for the auctions. And you know, that helps you overcome fear, because if you were to just go into an estate agent's office, imagine how daunting and scary that would be. And to be fair, walking into a room full of investors as well was scary. But the truth of the matter is, because you didn't need to talk to anyone, you just went to see what was going on. So definitely started to get a better understanding of the way, you know, the prices, getting an understanding of the market, so that when the property crash happened and the financial crisis happened in 2008, it now became a no-brainer, right?
Okay, yeah, go on.
The thing that I would say is that I had started to have developed friendships around my interests. And I always say it as well, you know, either get into a group of people who are always talking about investments and property, or find a friend in which you guys talk about 2 to 3 times a day about how to make it in life. Like, just be in that space. Because what happened was, me and this girl, we didn't know each other. We met through a mutual friend. And we are now really close now. And she's also quit her own full-time job to go full-time into property. And what happened was, around and we'd been talking a lot about getting together and, you know, and maybe doing a property deal together, because we both had just enough to do a half of buying a property. And if you think about it, we're based in, so we then joined forces together when the market was obviously depressed, and that was the first property forward. So that's what started me.
That's what started the journey. Oh, that's lovely. And you touched on it, that going into like the property world, investment world, can be daunting, especially now with everything that's going on. So what advice would you give to us moms trying to buy or invest that are hesitant at this time?
Yes, indeed. So one thing I would say is that if you have funds, then you're in a much better place, obviously, because you then can dictate what you want. Of course, with investing, it's different from buying your house. With your house, you can have your own you can have place your own stamp on it. You can decide to be a bit more picky. But when it comes to investing, you need to keep your mind focused. It's not about you. It's about the investment, right? So if you are looking to invest, it's all about detaching yourself and not emotional about the purchase. Okay, you need to look at the numbers. I always say follow the money. And one of the reasons why I definitely started off with auctions. I've developed other ways of sourcing properties, but auctions, one of the reasons why I liked it was because it opened your mind up to other places. Like I always say, like the Northeast, that's super popular now. I knew about the Northeast about 7 years ago, because the prices that used to come through the auctions were like, how are properties so cheap? How is the property 25? Like, that's like a deposit, for God's sake, you know? So it really is fascinating how you can pick up a lot just by being in the space. And then for those mothers that don't have the funds, You know,
Yeah.
I will. It's difficult to juggle being a mother, a wife,
True.
like even if you're not a wife, you're still taking care of someone. Do you understand?
Always.
Then
Yeah.
you have a job, then maybe a business, then a side hustle, then your friends. Let's not talk about the friends. So it's like there's so many things going on, and with all of that, now trying to get into property, I will tell you it's a challenge. You're definitely going to have sleepless nights. There's no way around it. I tell you, in the week, I have to schedule some hours in the middle of the night when the house is quiet and I can work.
Oh my God.
I can just have some me time, brain time, because, during the day, there's so much hustle. There's so much going on. Lockdown, right? So, yeah, so I would say if you don't have the funds, then you want to partner up with people that have funds, or just tap into maybe start off with rent to rent, those types of things. Start off with the rent to rent close to you, definitely, because it's going to be difficult to do it if it's remote and it's your first property. But yeah, so that's a day for mums.
Okay, thank you. Trying to get into it. So next thing would be like debts and struggles, because that always play like a part in us getting onto that property ladder. So to save for that deposit, and we are now being labeled as Kilo say generation of renters. So is it like best to be debt free before investing or buying property? What would you say about that?
So you see, the truth of the matter is, and some people will say go into debt so you can buy property, and you should be careful with some of that type of advice. I would say you can go into debt maybe if you were doing a refurbishment, and you're going to refinance after maybe 6 months, and then you can pay back that debt. I definitely do that a lot. But you have to always have an exit for debt, right? So a lot of times when I'm carrying debt is because I know, okay, I either have a structure to pay it off, or I know this property deal is going to pay this off. I don't want to be holding debt just in perpetuity. It's not ideal. So I would say, if an opportunity comes where you can do a joint venture with a friend, or maybe an uncle who has some funds and is thinking of parking it here, you can get maybe 10% from helping him do the entire thing. I would say jump on that, right? But your aim should be to pay down debt, because think about it, the percentage of debt, right? If you're running your debt at 19, 24%, sometimes 48%, there's no property deal in the world that's going to get you those valuations, right? You want to make sure that you clear that debt off first before you. And in any case, I tell you, banks are ruthless. They won't give you a mortgage anyway if you have a lot of debt, right?
Okay.
So they're always going to assess your personal circumstances to decide.
Of course, yeah.
I
respect that. So in that sense, because you just said they'll assess like your personal finances and stuff. So is it always best, I guess, to go with someone so their income looks more together? Would you advise that?
Yes, this is why I say joint ventures. And where are you based? Let's start with that. Where are you based? Oh, you're in London.
Yeah.
If you wanted to invest in London, and even if you wanted to invest out, say up north, I would say it's always easier, especially with the first ones, to obviously joint ventures do have, they come with their own risks, disclaimer, because you have to make sure that you and the person work well together, that you won't, even if there are arguments, you have ways to resolve those arguments, because they'll undoubtedly in business you'll come across things that will you'll have differences of opinion on, right? So you have to have a good working relationship, a good personal respect for each other, right? Say that it will help if you can combine forces, because they will look at both your credit histories, they will look at both your debt structure, how much debt you're carrying versus how much cash you have, so they're going to look at all those different things. And if you can then make sure that you've built up enough of a force together, then you're more likely to get a mortgage that at least is for investment than you are if you were to just go it alone, right? So
yeah, that's right. So thank you, that's good. So good advice there. Okay, and then the other one is like, for someone that's building financial stability, that may sometimes take some time. Is it best to get on the property ladder as soon as financially possible, or save and help our children to buy when they are older? What would you say about that?
Hear the latter part. You said wait till the children are.
So building financial stability may take some time for some people. So is it best to get on the property ladder as soon as we can, or we save and help our children to buy their home when they're older?
Really good question, because you may have to make that decision, right? Where, and I know people that have made that decision where they've more or less saved up funds for their children to then, because they know that their children are going to be they're going to be starting from a clean slate, right?
Yeah.
The thing with with lenders is that they can be unforgiving for a period of time, right? So if you've defaulted on loans, you've had like 3 missed payments, things like that can really impede people from getting mortgages. And mortgage is one of the ways to get on the property ladders. It's difficult to, unless you go again further up north, to buy properties in cash, right? So if you wanted to then get on the property ladder and you were assessing your situation, you thought, you know what, I'm a bit compromised, maybe I've had a couple CCJs, whatever, then it could be a long-term strategy to then save money. So part of the money will be to pay down whatever debt you have, and then the other part will be towards saving for your children so that they can then take the baton and get their own first property. So that way, either way, you're not losing out. I think the worst thing is if you don't prepare for yourself and you can't get a property on your own, but you're also not making long-term plans for your like for the future generation so they can get their own, right? So I like that question because it's making you think, you know what, if I can't make it work on my own, I can always save up so that I become bank of mom and dad for my parents, for my kids, and then get them, and you can do a structure with the kids as well where you have some part of equity because you've contributed to it,
Yeah.
So it works out in the end. It really does.
Okay, that's good. That's good to know, because many of us are still keen to buy, even if it means moving out of our hometowns. What research should we do when moving outside of London to areas that aren't as multicultural? Yeah, I think this is my thing now, moving to somewhere that's multicultural and not too, because
But you know what's interesting is that a lot of people are moving out of London because, first of all, of course, COVID has now made people realize that they don't have to live in the cities anymore. They can actually live in places that they have access, as long as they have a good Wi-Fi connection, then they don't need to be, like a hop step away from the city center, right? So that has definitely been a big shift since the lockdown and since this pandemic. But I would say, if you were looking to move out, because there are people who have made that decision of their family have come together and say, you know what, we're going to go into property investing and we're going to go to our patch, our gold mine area. That is an area where we understand, we know the deals work there, and we're going to live 20 minutes from where we think we're going to be investing in, right? And so there are a few things you want to look out for. So you want to look out for places where obviously property prices have to be affordable, but where you feel like there's enough of growth potential in the future. So, some of these regional markets that weren't as popular before, so like the Manchesters, the Birminghams, Liverpools, they were historically popular. Then the crash happened, and then a lot of those property prices tanked. So a lot of investors didn't go into those areas for a while because they were all worried about, capital appreciation. Now those areas have come back, and they're really, like, you should follow the big companies. They're all really piling into some of these areas. There's a lot of development in those areas. And property prices are still relatively cheap, especially when you compare them to London prices. So you could decide to move to that kind of town or city. And so you're still in a semi-cultural area, remember, because a lot of these cities that are not necessarily London are still quite cultural, right?
Multicultural.
Yeah, multicultural. So you'll still get a bit of that. But if you do decide to go live in a village, then you
be like, no.
Property feels in a village, I don't think.
I will survive there. Okay, because that's good. Because I think that's one of my things when moving. It's like creating a list of what I'm going to compromise with and what I'm not going to compromise with. And I think that was definitely one of them. He has to be a multicultural for my children.
The kids and schools as well, because a lot of people consider kids and schools when they're making those types of decisions. So it's not just about property; it's also about, will my kids go to good schools?
Exactly. It's things like this. So what were some of the things that were like on, I guess, your list when you bought your first property? What did you want for your family?
So I love that question because that's family home. So I love my family home story, I must tell you, because it It was a property I'd actually seen on the market, like through an estate agent. And we'd gone to see the property and we're like, yeah, it's just a bit too expensive because we're going to have to do a lot of work. It was like, it hadn't been touched for about over 20 years. Even the stuff that had been done needed to be redone. It cost a lot. We knew that. And then we just said, you know what, let's look for something else because it's too expensive. Then maybe about 4 months later, why am I looking through my favorite place, the auctions? And I see the same property listed at 200.
God said it was yours.
Below the thousand below the price we saw it at. When my husband sent it to me, as in I was like, wait, why are you sending me this link? He was like, look at it. And then I clicked through and I was like, oh my God, it's an auction. I said, oh my God, this is our home. Like,
that is it. And just like that, you got it. Amazing.
And guess what? When we got to the auction, we were the only ones. There was another guy who was bidding, who I think was planted by the auction house. You know, I'm just saying anything, but he didn't seem too convinced about buying the house. He just seemed to put up his hand once or twice. And I was so nervous because I was like, this is like semi-dream home. I still have one more home in me, but this is like the next, the next level.
And you got it.
Yeah, so we got it. We got it.
See? This is the lesson: is what is meant to be for you will always find you.
Exactly.
See, that is it. Oh, that's so nice.
It's a great show.
Oh, I like that. Because so next one is, if a family has opportunity to buy their home in London. Wait, if the family has opportunity to buy their London council flat at a discount, is it worth seeking an independent flat valuation before proceeding, as more aren't in the best condition?
Yes.
Oh God, you're not happy.
Like I've heard somebody's funny. I don't know if she's on, but there's somebody who at one point she was sending me messages about, should I buy this house? I'm really worried about buying it. I said, how much is it worth? Oh, it's worth about 150K. How much are they giving it to you? It's about 50K. I'm like, I don't understand why we're having this question. This
conversation.
You have a equity of which it becomes yours after 3 years. Like, what's not to love? Like, go look.
Conversation.
Don't think about it. It needs refurbishment. It needs refurbishment. Whatever. You have 100K. 100K is yours. Like, seriously.
Can you imagine?
So no.
So we got the answer to that one, y'all. Yeah.
Okay. Personal circumstances. Go talk to a broker. Make sure you can afford the payments and all of that. But do everything you can to get that property because it's literally being handed to you. So for sure.
Literally, I'd love to have that opportunity. So as you said, you mentioned in your Mom Should Invest in Property post how flexible property investing can be.
Yeah.
What are 3 things you wish you knew when you started?
Wow. One of my biggest strategies that I use now, which by the way is now becoming like common knowledge, so it's now even more difficult. But I remember the time when I got started, I used to just buy a property, refurbish the property and then put it back on the market. I wouldn't try and uplift the value. I wouldn't do anything. But the market was okay because that's how we were doing it. Just buy the property. It's a 1-bed, do it up, put it back on the market, make some money. Then I happened to go into a viewing with where there were a few people all viewing the same property. And one guy then started talking about what he was planning to do with the property. And I was like, wow, that is a thing. And so simple. And I just realized that I had just been literally dropping 30K every single project that I had done up till then. So I think I'd done about 3 projects up to then. And literally each of those projects could have netted me way more if I just known a simple strategy. So for me, it's things like that I wish I'd known, that's kind of like one of my, maybe it's not the end of the world mistake. I still made some money. It's just that I could have made more. So one of the things.
Okay, any other things you could tell us about? Because we're trying to get on this ladder, man.
Yeah. Anything else I can tell you about? So I think for me, another thing is definitely putting yourself out there more. So I think that's one thing I didn't do as much. I could have networked a bit more, because creativity comes with speaking to other people in property. Now, when I quit my job to go full-time in property, I was the only one at that time in my network of friends that had done that. Everybody else still kind of had their jobs and, wanted to be career people, and that's fine. But it was quite a lonely existence, right, in the early days. And it wasn't until I started networking, which was quite midway into my journey, that I started realizing, I could have sort of benefited more from networking. So when I say networking, it's going for other events where there are people that are interested in property. If you're interested in property, talking to other people, being more out there. The other thing too about networking is also networking within your own community as well. If you go to a church, there was a guy who told me that if you're a property person and you go to any community, where people are gathered and people don't know that you are a property person, then you're doing yourself a disservice. You need to be constantly not necessarily be that person that's like, oh, yeah, there she's coming again, but you need to let people know that you need to let
I'm here.
you need to let people know that you're there, you can help. And recently, it's because now we're as property people, we're needing to investors, we're needing to become more creative in some of the ways we acquire properties. And so really going down to understand what's hurting people, and understanding, it's almost like you become a counselor in a sense, where you want to help people out of their problems. So you can't just be thinking about your own self, like the original capitalistic way of running a business or getting into property. You need to be thinking about how you're solving another person's problem. Because if you're solving a problem, then invariably, you'll be helping yourself, because they'll always be coming back to you because they feel like, I can always get information, I can always get help. So you want to be that person that people know that if I have a property problem, then I need to call this person, or, because she's going to help me, she's going to try. Yeah. So very important as well. So.
I love that. Well, thank you. The next thing I wanted to ask is it the Help to Buy scheme? Because when I talk to people, when I said that, I was looking at that scheme for myself, but I have a lot of people putting me off, saying you need to read into it more because there's some, technical stuff that can always go off on your side and things like that. So fill me in on the Help to Buy scheme so I'm more knowledgeable and more confident in going forward with that.
Okay. I'm not the perfect person on Help to Buy, to be honest, but I do think that it's a scheme by the government to help people to get on the property ladder, right? Yeah. And will pay a portion towards the deposit, and you only have to come up with 5%, right? So which especially imagine you have a job where you're earning, let's say 40 or 50K, it means that you only need to find 5% of the property value. Now, if the property value is valued about, I remember I was helping one of my aunts do analysis around how she could afford a Help to Buy, and we analyzed it based on her income, based on and it's so easy because you literally just go online, find developers that are already signed up to the Help to Buy scheme, and then you just look for properties and they will give you the numbers. So that's how we went. Yeah, they will give you the numbers. So basically we looked for properties, maybe it was 300,000. It will tell you how much you should be earning, how much your deposit needs to be, what you'll be getting. So we were looking for either 3-bed houses or 3-bed flats. And based on the criteria, we quickly realized that she couldn't afford to buy a house, she could afford to buy a flat. And it all worked out. She would only be paying like £16,000, but this property was worth almost 400,000, or somewhere between 50 and 400, right? But because the government is supporting. Now, of course, there's always the downside, which is the monthly payments are high, right? If you had on your own, your monthly payments will be significantly lower. But remember, now you're not only paying for your own portion of the mortgage, you're also paying rent to the government for having taken the other portion of the 5%. So normally it's 25% loan to value, and the government is then paying the other percentage, right? So you're paying the government rent for living in the property. So there's all that you need to just consider.
Pros and cons.
Yes, but it does. If you can't afford and you have the deposit, then it's definitely, because what happens is you're now a co-owner of a property, as opposed to if you were renting, where you're not getting any upside from the application of the property. So imagine you live in a property for 5 years. If you're paying rent for 5 years, that's money just gone. But if at least you had it in this government scheme, then over the 5 years, if the property value goes up by 100K, then your portion, even if it's just 20, you're still 20K rich.
And that's what I like to hear.
Yeah.
That's what I like to hear. Because I think that's all the questions I had for today. But I'm going to see if anyone has questions, because it's been so insightful. Very insightful. Oh, we have a question. And it says, how did you balance your time between running your home and building your business? What was the key to that? What was the key?
I can't lie. A good husband is one of the keys. Because the thing is, thankfully, the guy that I married is quite hands-on. So, you know, he's helped a lot with the cooking, helped a lot with stuff. And especially with when things were very dark for me, were not dark, but like they were tough last year when the lockdown happened and all of a sudden all businesses stopped, and, you know, a lot of my businesses were very exposed. So, you know, during that period, I had to be making very difficult calls, you know, like things. So some days I would just literally shut down. And that was when we were taking care of the kids. So, you know, some days I would be there with the kids, but I wouldn't be able to function because I knew that I had to do stuff. So he would come and step in and help. So, but I would say as an ongoing, normally I find that, and I actually wrote out something about this. I said, first of all, you have to have a very clear schedule, especially these times that we're having, you know. So now in my house, you kind of wake up at a certain time. So now we're not sticking to it quite so much because my parents are around, so I can give them to my parents. But when yeah, exactly. When or during the lockdown the first time, I literally put together a schedule for the day. That's the only way we could survive. So I knew between this time and this time they were doing this. Between 12 and 2, they were in their rooms and I could have some time to myself, right? And so I did that just to create some structure. And then I also say something about stacking things together. So if you know you're going to be feeding the kids and they're going to be in the kitchen, then you might as well do your laundry then, right? You know, like we probably know some things, but try and think about your day and just put things that you're going to be in the same area together, so you don't have to be running around. So like you put the kids to bed, then you're now doing the laundry. There's no point. You might as well do it. So there are things that can coexist. So you want to be thinking through those things to make your life simplify. Just simplify your life a little bit, right? And then a little bit. And then the last thing is, of course, the night. I'm sorry, you know, some people say, oh, sleep, take care of yourself. I say you need some time for you. Like you need just you time. The house is quiet. Nobody's, you know, everybody's sleeping. Even the husband is sleeping. And you can just have like 2 hours to yourself, just chilling, you know, watching whatever you want to watch. Nobody's competing with you for the TV, you know, just have your own time. So,
yeah.
So I do that sometimes. I'll go to bed early with the kids. And then 1 o'clock, I'll be so happy. I'm like, oh my gosh, from 1 to 3, me alone here. No, so that's, I say you need to do that.
I am definitely a believer in time for yourself, because you need to read. Oh God, yeah.
Yeah.
We have, I think it's Bernice. The question is, what's your main strategy? I'm not sure in what regards. If it's the property or is it motherhood? Bernice?
I understand what that question means, actually. So
yeah.
it's a strategy question. So
okay.
Within property, there are like a million different strategies. It's called like literally, you know, you can have rent to rent, you can have, you know, say buy to let, you know, HMO, service accommodation, different things you can get into. So for me, I started off flipping. So I talk about something called the 5-stage property journey, right? Where I talk about at if different stages, you have different goals, right? So at the beginning, when you get started, usually your goals are cash driven. So I call it the cash acquisition stage. And so every strategy that you're doing then is all about how can I maximize cash? How can I generate cash? You know, and so at the beginning I started with flipping because I had some initial funds to start with flipping. And flipping is where you buy a property, you do it up, and then you sell it on, right? You don't hold it. You can't hold it. You need to release the money so you can go into another project. So I started with flips. But then flips have their downside, which is you have money when, I call it the developer's dilemma. You have money when you have sold a property, but the minute you're back in another project, then you're tight because somehow projects just suck up all your money, right? So because of that, I needed to figure out another strategy, which then ended up being what I call rent-to-rent service accommodation, which is where you rent a property, say from an agent or a landlord, at say £1,000. Then you then rent that property out to, say, tenants or guests who are coming, say, at the property for a week, 2 weeks, and you make money off the differential. So normally maybe you'll be able to rent it out at, say, £800 a week. So now imagine £800 a week times 4, that's 3,200, but you're only paying £1,000 to the landlord, right? You still make some money. So I would say that is the quickest way people have gotten out of their jobs. If your idea was to quit your job and do property full time, that's been the quickest way most people do it. Just find 3 or 4 of those. I had a slogan that with 5 properties, you can literally be fine, you know, like you can be free to leave your job, because 5 properties means that each of those properties is probably netting you about £1,000 a month. Do you understand? With the yeah, okay. So
we are ready. I think after this live, everyone's gonna go on their laptop. Look, where can I just start flipping some properties? Because I'm ready. That's amazing. I feel like this life has given us some gems, especially for us, whether we're moms or not moms, like wanting to get on the property ladder. I think it's opened my eyes to a few things I didn't really know. So I'm thankful for that.
Yeah.
But,
and yeah,
I
strategy within property that, you know,
honestly
meets you where you are. So if you want to go big, you want to be a big developer, you can do that. But if you want to just keep it simple, you want something that's just bringing in some income to the household, whoever you're with, then you can also find strategies within property that do that as well. But either way, it's still hard work. You know, property is not really, until you get to the point where you have like your assets built up and it's just giving you rent. Usually property investing can be very, very time consuming. So it's just
sorry. So there's another question that says, what is the key to building a good property team?
Good one. So one of the things I would say, you know, I had this conversation on Clubhouse. If you guys are not on Clubhouse, you need to be on Clubhouse. You get so much stuff for free. Obviously, you still need, like somebody said, you get maybe a fifth of what you would have normally, what you need to really be successful. But you get a lot of information in some of those rooms. So what we were talking about was, what was the question again? I just went blank.
Oh, so it says, what is the key to building a good property team?
Oh yeah, so the teams. So one of the things you want to do is making sure that it depends on what strategy you're doing. So let's say let's start with the simplest one, which is say service accommodation, because that's what I really know. So usually with a team around service accommodation, you want to definitely have people like like a handyman, somebody that's going to be there easily accessible to the property in case somebody calls you in the middle of the night to fix something. That also goes for HMOs, like some of these high cash flow strategies, but really need a lot of touch points with the tenants in the property, right? So you want to have a team that definitely know what they're doing. They have, you don't need to. Sometimes you want to be cheap by getting somebody who is cheap, but you pay for what you get for. So so a lot of times, it will impact on the service that you're then giving to whoever it is that's staying in the property. So you have to be very careful. You want to keep costs down, but you also want to make sure that you have competent people. So it's the way you vet the people that work with you. And you can have them on a temporary basis, maybe 1 week trial to see how they are first before you then take them on. I say for people who want to do refurbishments, you want to make sure that you definitely vet the people that you're working with. Make sure you get reviews, go see some of the work that they've done before. Don't just rely on what they're saying. You want to see, because if they are a good builder, they should have access to a property that they've done before. So you want to see something that they've done before, have good conversations with them about what their ideas for your project are. You want to interview at least 5 different builders on a project and get an idea of what they're all saying, because that will help okay, these are potentially some of the issues, because every single builder will come with a new perspective. So so that question is a bit broad, because it depends on what strategy that you are employing is going to determine the team that you're putting together.
Yes, I hope that helped, Nabila. That was great gems being dropped here, and y'all getting it for free, so thanks. It's great gems being dropped. I think, hold on, see if you have any more questions. I think that's all the questions for today, unless anyone has anything. But yeah, as a lot of people are saying, it's been very informative. Honestly, it's been really helpful, and a lot of engagement, which means you're really dropping those gems. You really have. So thank you so much. Thank you for taking your time out and really helping us get to where we need to go to in the property world. So thank you.
Not at all.
Thank you. Yeah, me too. We'll catch up on the other side.
All right.
See you later. Bye.
Bye.
And I think that's it for today. Thank you, everyone. I said scroll up. Oh, sorry, Bernice. She's gone. Wait, I didn't see any more questions. But yeah. So sorry. So that is the end of it for today. You can follow Dolly on Property Mom UK, and she'll be tagged in the post, and we'll be sharing this, so you can go to her page and get more gems. But thank you for tuning in today. Thank you. Bye.